Today I'm going to talk about my ideal situation of living in a lighthouse and marrying a Selkie. Okay, actually I am going to talk about the Selkie folklore a little bit, not as in-depth as maybe I will in later videos. I love folklore, I love this sort of thing. I wasn't being facetious though. My ultimate ideal situation probably would be to live in a lighthouse with a Selkie. Becoming married to a Selkie is kind of problematic, and we'll talk about that. But anyway, just so you know, that's the reason why I originally made this video, is because I was interested in that. I love folklore and mythology. Celtic folklore and mythology I love, especially that part of the world. And then this specific, this is specifically island folklore in, the Orkneys and the Shetland Islands in Ireland and in these sorts of places. I can't say that it comes from Celtic myth as far back as that. It might have some Norse tie-ins as well. What we really think it is, well, what the scholars really think it is just natively like Orkney, Shetland Island, those island peoples, just the islands of Ireland too, like Isle of Man, those places, that is where it really begins. So anyway, I love Selkies. I think they're beautiful, and the legend is beautiful. There's so much tragedy there as well. Lighthouses are also freaking cool, and not that lighthouses and Selkies are always kind of like intertwined, but that one movie, Song of the Sea, from that beautiful Irish animation studio, and all of their Wolf Walker and Book of Kells is beautiful as well. Giving them a shout out, not sponsored, but love them. Things like kind of cement this in our mind, and I don't know, I just love the idea of just living out there, being one with the ocean, living in a lighthouse. I might have to do that for a bit. I don't know. And maybe I'll meet a Selkie. And if so, I'm gonna treat that Selkie right. No, I'm not gonna hide that Selkie's skin, which is something I should talk about, I guess, if you don't know about it. So these are the seal folk. They have a lot of different names. Selkie probably comes from the Scots word selk or selch. I don't know actually how to say that. I think it's just selk, which means seal, so it's the diminutive, so it's like a little seal. And this is the legend of a people who live next to these animals, and we often find in folklore and mythology legends of people and their ties with animals, and I just think that's beautiful. So we're talking, the Northern Isles of Scotland, Ireland, some Norse places as well, northern places. Now these Selkies can be friendly or dangerous, and if you haven't heard the story, it's pretty classic, right? A Selkie is a seal creature who comes onto land and shapeshifts into a human by taking off their seal skin, laying it on the beach to dry out and dancing or staying on the beach, and then a human will often come and steal that seal skin, force the Selkie to be wedded to them, and then they'll have children together, and then years and years later that Selkie will find the seal skin and escape to the sea, and they'll never be seen again. So there's always this kind of air of tragedy to it, and just some kind of bad vibes with forcing somebody to marry you. But anyway, there are a lot of variations of this legend. There's a lot of names, but I do want to say that these areas of the world have legends about the merfolk. In Ireland, they're called the Merrow. In kind of northern places, they're called the Finfolk. And these are the mermaids, right, of the Celtic lands. And a lot of times they're separate from the Selkies. Sometimes they're kind of muddled if they're the same thing or not in some legends, but usually they're separate. The seal wives of northern folklore is sometimes mixed with the merfolk, but they seem to be a different thing, right? The half-fish people are different from the people that turn into seals, but when you go to chase down a legend, they can get kind of mixed and muddled. So I have to say that there's a lot of theories about where the Selkie myth comes from, and one of the ones that's very prominent that was actually put forth in Victorian times is that Inuit or Finnish or Sami people, and Sami people are kind of the native peoples of some of those northern Norse countries. The legend is that they would come in their sealskin kayaks, and they would wear sealskin, and when the sealskin gets too wet, after about 8 hours, it gets too wet, it doesn't float anymore, so they'd have to come to shore and dry it out, and they would dry out their clothes as well, and then that would make sense that it's you see this kind of half animal in the water, it comes out, it takes off its skin, it is human, and then maybe some intermarrying between those people and the old Scots people or the Irish people kind of gave rise to these sorts of legends. That's one of the theories. Another explanation is syndactyly, and syndactyly is webbed fingers or toes. This occurs in one in thousands of births, and scholars think that maybe this was a way to explain why syndactyly was a thing. I know why they have webbed fingers. It's because, you know, their great-great-great-great-grandfather married a Selkie and stole her away from the sea, or their great-great-grandmother was stolen away by a Selkie man, or whatever. So maybe that it was just a way that they came up with to explain that stuff. That's an interesting one. And actually there were families like the McColdrums of the seals in Ireland who apparently had webbed toes and fingers, and that people would say it's because they're Selkie people. They had a Selkie in their ancestry, and that's actually a common thing in those parts of the world. Being married to a member of the Fae or something like that. There was a fairy in our family line. That's why we have this ability or this quirk to us, you know, and that was just a cool, interesting thing. But again, could have been a way to explain it, or it could have been something that actually happened. I'm not closed to the idea of interdimensional visitors from other worlds, as you guys all know. Who knows what happened or what was going on back in the day. But I find this stuff just fascinating. What's really cool is that, like, the Celtic diaspora, right? These people that kind of went to other places, and a lot of times in the Northern Islands, they were pushed out by landowners and then settled in the Americas, in British Columbia and places like this. They brought their legends with them. So anywhere that they went, we also see some of that. And in other parts of the world, they have similar legends, like the Swan Maidens in Japanese folklore. And it's just a beautiful legend. I have a lot of Scottish. I'm about a quarter Scottish, and then I have Irish blood as well through my mom. And the Orkney Islands is a place I gotta go for a lot of reasons, but because there might be Selkies there waiting. And if so, I just want everyone to know that if I happen upon a Selkie skin, I'm not gonna steal it. I'm not gonna hide it. As much as I might be tempted to do, I think that is a non-consensual way to get a Selkie wife. If I'm gonna have a Selkie wife, it's gonna be through her own will and choice, and maybe I'll put on a seal skin. I don't know. But anyway, if you know of lighthouses, if anybody knows of a lighthouse that needs somebody, that's maybe in a place where Selkies would be, I'm into just seeing what would happen. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not gonna force anything. Just let it be how it is and just explore it. Also, there's the fact that living in a lighthouse is a very lonely existence. And maybe those seals just be looking extra good after a couple months. You know, I don't know. I'm not judging anybody. I'm just saying. Who knows where myths and legends come from? But it is a beautiful one that has spawned so much poetry, so much art, so much storytelling, songs, and this idea of, you know, a mother wanting to go back to her homeland after being taken away from it, even though she has children, but being able to return to her homeland and still watching over her children. That's part of the myths and legends, is the Selkie wife. She goes home, but there's always a seal around to help the children if they're ever drowning or in a shipwreck, to guide them back to shore. And she's always watching over them, which I think is a beautiful part of the legend. Anyway, yeah, Selkies. Drop a comment, I don't know. I am glad that I got to talk about that today. Lighthouses are freaking cool and beautiful. And I'm Levi, and this is Outlandish.